Asaph laid the devastation before God in verses 1 through 4. Now he turns from description to interrogation. He does not ask whether God sees. He asks how long God intends to let this continue. How long, Lord? Wilt thou be angry forever? Shall thy jealousy burn like fire? Psalm 79, verse 5. The question, how long, is a prayer pressed to its sharpest point. Asaph knows God is angry. He does not dispute that. Israel's covenant-breaking produced God's discipline, and Asaph does not pretend otherwise. What he presses is the duration. Will this anger burn without end? Will the jealousy of God consume his own people? The word jealousy carries the full force of God's covenant exclusivity. God's jealousy is not insecurity. It is the righteous response of the one true God to a people who gave their devotion to what was not God. Israel chased idols. God destroyed them. Asaph does not argue against the justice of God's anger. He argues against its permanence, appealing to God's own character as the God who forgives and restores. Asaph's question presses against everything God has revealed about himself. God declared himself slow to anger and abundant in mercy. Asaph holds those declarations against the present fire. This is how the saints pray under discipline. They do not deny God's right to judge. They press into God's mercy and ask him to act according to his fullest character. Pour out thy wrath upon the heathen that have not known thee, and upon the kingdoms that have not called upon thy name. Psalm 79, verse 6. Asaph makes a distinction. God's wrath burns against Israel for covenant unfaithfulness, but the nations that destroyed Jerusalem operate under no such covenant. They have not known God, nor have they called upon his name. They came into God's inheritance as pagans serving false gods, and they executed their destruction with pride and contempt for the God of Israel. Asaph prays for God's wrath to be redirected, not to extinguish the fire, but to turn it toward those who have no covenant relationship with God and no acknowledgement of his name. The prayer carries a theological argument. Israel sinned against light, and God disciplines them. The heathen nations sinned against the Creator they never acknowledged, and they remain under his wrath. Asaph appeals to God to act, distinguishing between the people God disciplines and the people God judges as his enemies. For they have devoured Jacob and laid waste his dwelling place. Psalm 79, verse 7. Asaph provides the grounds for his petition in verse 6. The heathen nations did not just defeat Israel in battle, they devoured Jacob. What a predator does to its prey, the nations did to God's covenant people. To devour Jacob is to attack God himself. Next, Asaph brings up the destruction of the dwelling place. The word points to the pastures, the settled habitations where Israel lived under God's covenant provision. Pagan nations reduce these places to waste. The land God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as an everlasting inheritance now lies desolate under the hands of those who neither knew God nor called upon his name. The devouring of Jacob and the laying waste of his dwelling place are actions taken against God's own possession.